Hello, in this episode of Exploring Rust, I'm going to take a look at different ways of handling errors. So after the catastrophe of the last video, where I ended up basically just looking at panic and recreating a really complex example from the Rust docs, where you try to open a file and then create the file if it doesn't succeed and end up being forced to use 3 levels of nested match statement, I thought I kind of needed a different approach here to digesting this documentation. So what I did is I went through and I tried to abstract all the actual error handling information in there into some simple examples, which I'm going to try to work through now. So I'm kind of working through my own examples here. So rather than try to work with an existing function that returns a result enum, which can indicate error, I'm going to make up a function here. I'll just call it run. And that is going to return something of type result, which I don't think I need an import for. I think this is in the prelude. But that is a template type. And let's say that the first thing that it can contain is a string. And the second thing can be IO error. Then I can implement this function. Actually, I might need an import for IO error. I believe that's standard IO error. And then I could actually get rid of this IO, and I should be able to return, for example, OK with a string in it, like all fine. I probably have to convert that to a string. So the other alternative would be to return an error. Let's maybe duplicate that line and comment this out, and let's try to return. So we're always going to return a result here, but what if I want to return a result containing an error? So in here I'm going to need some stuff, and I believe I can use error : new, and there we can specify error kind. So where is that? That's in IO as well, I think. Let's try this. Let's try to import error kind, and here I could write error kind : other. No, wait, let's get this right. This is an argument to error new. So that goes there. And then I have a string like something bad happened. All right, I think that's correct. Let's see if that compiles. Yeah, that doesn't compile, but expected one of this or this. What's wrong with that? Oh, yeah, I've got to put use here. Completely forgot about the use. I was so focused on getting the imports right, I forgot the keyword. So now, that still doesn't work, but yeah, I see what I've done. This should be error. Yeah, right. So we're returning a result. That means we've got to return one of the constants that belong to this result enum. The 2 constants are OK and err. So here I'm returning err, and this err, which is a constant of result, contains an error because that's the return type. So that's why I have to construct a new error here. Let's try this. Okay, that compiles. So I think I've got that right. So the idea is that this is a typical function that's either going to return OK or error. And if it returns OK, what's probably going to happen is that the OK is going to contain some value that we want to use, like, for example, a file handle, because file create and open, they return a thing of type result. And the question is, how do you get the value out of OK if it's OK and handle the error if it's not OK? Maybe the easiest way to do that is with unwrap. So I'm going to say here, let text equal, we'll call the run function. So, I mean, this would be legitimate code by itself. Let's run it. So that builds just fine. The difficulty is that what I'm going to get is of type result. And what I want is, well, either a string normally in this case or an error. And if we use if, let or match, they are going to force me to handle both possibilities. When all you really want to do is you want to say, okay, hopefully this is going to go all right. And what I'm going to get back is a string. But you can't just do that in Rust. You've got to handle the case where it's not what you expect, where it's the error, in this case, instead of a string. So the unwrap function is really useful for this. And what that apparently does is if the result is OK, it will get you the value that OK is hanging on to, like this all fine string in this case. If what is returned is not OK, it's just going to panic. Let's try this out. So yeah, I get a panic, and you can see that the error here contains the text something bad happened, so that's fine. Let's try to return OK instead. So I comment out error, and let's run that. Yeah, I didn't do anything with the text. Let's print it. So print ln exclamation mark, and in there I want text, and we're hoping that's going to be all fine. So when I run this, we get all fine. There's the text. So that's obviously much simpler than using if let or using match to handle both possibilities. If you don't mind the fact that it is just going to crash out if the unwrap doesn't work because it doesn't get OK. Let's try something else. So another possibility, which seems to be quite popular, is to use expect. I'm just going to duplicate this because this is going to be really similar. I say expect, and now I can supply a message here. And I guess the name expect implies that we're supposed to type here what we expected to get. Let's type expected string, and I'm just going to run that. Yeah, so it says all fine again because of course we're getting OK, but if I comment that out and unleash this, yeah, now we get a panic. So the unwrap is panicking. Where's my error message? Oh yeah, but the first one's panicking. So yeah, if I want this to run, obviously I'm going to have to comment out this. So what shall I do about this? Let's just temporarily comment it out. This is another way of just throwing a panic, but with an error message as far as I understand. Let's run this then. Yeah, so you can see I've got this text, something bad happened. I haven't got the original text though now, have I? I haven't got this. Wait, yeah, I've got something bad happen. I haven't got expected string, have I? I don't see expected string in here. Oh no, it is there. It's right there. Okay, so I suppose that's just a way of supplying a bit of extra information than you could give with unwrap. Let's put OK back. So now it should run without any problems. Yeah, it says all fine. And try something else. So the next thing I want to try is unwrap or else. So yeah, I'll duplicate that actually. It's going to be a bit similar. And here I'm going to use unwrap or else. And that's a function. Now this uses a syntax called a closure. To be 100% honest, I've never really understood the term closure. I've used closures a lot, but I don't feel like I've really got a grasp of what a closure is supposed to be. Every time I look up a definition, it doesn't seem to help. But what we can do here is something that just looks like a lambda expression. So I can just put in here, in like vertical bars, some kind of variable name that I can make up, like error. And after that, we've got an open and close curly bracket. And we're either going to get this text or else we're going to do this stuff. So I can't quite remember how this works. Let's do print ln exclamation mark and output error in there. Now if I want to return something else, can I just put in here like a string, like didn't work out or something like that? Didn't work out. I'm not sure about this. So I'm going to run this. Yeah, I've got to have a semicolon, and it says, oh no, I've just forgotten a semicolon there. Put that in, try again. I'll do cargo format. That's taking ages. Cargo run, right. Oh, yeah, it seems like it might be fine if I just add toString there. That's another thing I'm not clear about. I'm not really clear when and why I need to explicitly convert to a string. So anyway, let's put .toString here to convert it to a string with a capital S. And we'll try that again. Yeah, so it says all fine. All right, but what happens if I make it throw an error, this function, and now I try to run this? Now it says something bad happened, didn't work out. So where's all that coming from? Make this a bit smaller. So the something bad happen is coming from the function itself. So it's coming from here. And then unwrap or else doesn't panic, so we're not crashing the program here. We're just returning this text instead of the text that we might have wanted, which will be this. And I'm just printing that down here. So we've got expect and unwrap if you actually want to throw a panic if things go wrong. And then we've got unwrap or else. If you want to say, okay, try to do the unwrap, get the value out of the OK constant, whatever it is. I need to look up terminology as well, actually. And if you can't do the unwrap, then do this code instead. And to be compatible with the return type, I'm pretty sure this is going to have to be whatever type of thing is expected here, which in this case would be a string, because that's what unwrap or else would return from the result if it didn't throw an error. Okay, so those are 3 good ways of handling errors, and there's another one that is maybe a little bit harder to demonstrate. I can see why in the documentation they're using file-related stuff. That's a good source of stuff that could potentially throw errors, so I think I'm going to do the same here. But this example shouldn't get particularly complicated. So I'm going to create a function called createFile. And I want to pass in a file name there, and I'm still not really clear on how best to pass strings to functions. I think I've forgotten some of the stuff that I originally covered earlier on. But let's have a file name here of type string. And this is also going to return a result. Let's make it return a result. And in a case that things go well, I'm just going to return unit for the OK constant. Otherwise, I'm going to return IO error. So I can just put error there because I've already imported it. And the reason for returning IO error in here is because that's what the file functions typically return. They return one of these result enums with some kind of error if it goes wrong. Otherwise, there's usually going to be a file handle here. So let's try to create a file and then write some text to the file. So I'm going to say let mute. Apparently this has to be mutable if I want to write to it. We'll try it without the mute though in a bit. Let's say file equals file : create, and I can pass a file name in there. Now if I just do this, the thing is file create is not going to return a file handle. It's going to return one of these result things. So I suppose one way to handle this would be with unwrap, like that. And then if this returns OK, we're going to get the file handle out of there. Otherwise, unwrap is just going to panic. Then I want to do file.write. And this takes apparently some bytes, but if I type hello there and then .2 bytes, that ought to work. And then finally, if we get to the end successfully, I'm just going to return OK, and I'm just going to put unit in there, since that's the only thing I can put in there, the way I've defined this, I suppose. So this can also throw an error. So, does it matter? Let's try to run this. So when I run this, okay, I'm getting use of undeclared type file. I have to import file, that makes sense. Let's do use standard fs, I think, for file system, and in there we need file. Let's try this. Clear the screen and run. Method not found in file. Yeah, so it actually tells me I've got to import this write thing, which is a trait which I still don't understand. I think if I import this, it will work. So let's go to the top and do that, and then try again. All right, I need to add a semicolon after write. Let's put that in and give this another go. It's looking better, but it says no method named 2 bytes found for reference static str in the current scope. I really think this worked earlier on. I really do. It's not possible they've renamed this, surely. Okay, well, let's try bytes then. Does that work? I clear that and run again. Yeah, it doesn't like that either. All right, I'm completely stumped because I'm sure that earlier on I tried this and it worked. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just Google this. Maybe if I copy that and put in file.write, maybe something will come up. Okay, I Googled it and that really didn't help at all. What if I remove that and, I don't know, put like a, randomly put in an ampersand? Does that help? No. What's one of these when it's at home? Okay, it definitely doesn't like the ampersand. Does it like this? Doesn't like that. Consider adding a leading B. I'll add a leading B then. Let's put a leading B in there. Now it actually compiles. I really don't understand that because I swear 2 bytes worked earlier on. Is it possible that Rust is changing so quickly that what I try on one computer doesn't work on another computer? I mean, I recognise this. Python has the same thing. This is just turning this string into bytes. I just don't understand why something that I typed on my laptop doesn't work here on my desktop. But anyway, let's forget about that. Does this actually work now? Is it actually working? So if I run it, okay, so I'm going to go back. I'll comment this out and I'll have OK in there, just so that I don't get this error text that I've created myself. And it just says all fine. I haven't got any files created because I'm not calling this function. Let's actually call it. So I'm going to go down here and call create file. Now let's try that. I've got to supply it with a string. Let's try temp.txt .toString to convert it to an actual mutable string. And I'm going to run this. So that runs just fine. And if I look at what I've got a temp.txt, and if I cat that, it's got hello there in it. So this stuff works. It's just that it is going to panic if this doesn't succeed. And what I'd like to do instead, because I made it so that create file can itself return a result which can contain an error, is if there's an error, I'd like to return it from create file. And in the documentation it says this is called propagating errors. Kind of a bit similar to catching a exception in Java or something and then rethrowing it, I suppose. And there's an elegant way to do that, which is, I just call the thing like this, but I put a question mark right there at the end of it. And it took me ages to understand what this actually does. But what it actually does is, if this returns OK, the question mark is going to go into OK and get the value that's in there and return it. So in this case, we'll get a file handle. If create returns error instead, it's going to return from the function. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in all the programming I've done. So it's going to look at a result. It's going to return the value that OK wraps, if possible. If there's no OK, it's going to return the error from the function. So let's actually run this and see it actually working. Cargo run. So it worked, and if I look at the file I created, we've got hello there in it. Just to prove it is working, let's just run this again and look at that file again. So you can see it's actually working, and apparently we can even concatenate calls to functions using this question mark. So I think I should be able to do. Hang on, let's just try it without mute, so I'm curious what that does. So if I run this now without mute being in there, wow, yeah, I can't do that. So we do actually need that mute. Now what about if I were to just run this and then immediately run this after the question mark like this? Could I even put a different file name in there, like test.txt maybe? Okay, I'm going to try that. So I run it. It says all fine. If I look at what I've got test.txt, and it's got hello there in it. All right, so pretty strange syntax, but yeah, very useful, I suppose. So you can only use it, as far as I understand, in a function that does return a result, because this has got to be able to return a result with an error in it, in the case where that's what you get back from the function that you're trying to call with this question mark. There's one other thing that I had a bit of a look at, but it just seemed too complicated, which is in the documentation at this point, which is that you can actually return a result from main. But instead of having a normal result, it's actually got a whole thing going on with something called a box and what looks like a keyword called dine. And I don't understand any of that at this point. So I think, after playing around with it a bit, I kind of arrived at the conclusion that I wasn't really benefiting from trying that out. I just need to know more about probably traits, I should think. So I think that's what's in the next section. And if it is, I'm going to be looking at that next time. So yeah, there's quite a few different ways of handling errors here. Unwrap or expect if you don't mind panicking. Unwrap or else if you want to avoid a panic. And this question mark operator, which we can only use in a function that returns a result. And we could make main even return a result, but that's probably not even really that useful. It's like throwing an exception out of main in Java, really. I suppose I could try doing file open just to actually see that working. So what if I do here, file open And let's call this not found.txt. So that file doesn't exist. Put a semicolon there. Now my understanding is that this should actually return from the function because we're going to get a result with an error in it. And I don't see that it would matter whether we actually try to get the return value of it or not, since it's just going to return because that's not going to exist. Let's try it. When I run this, it still says all fine, but then I should be getting some result out of create file. Let's do let result equal, and maybe I can print this with print line. Let's try putting in here result, see what that does. So when I run this, okay, apparently we can't print a result. Oh, it says in format strings you may be able to use this. All right, let's do that. Let's put in colon question mark and try again. So if I run it, yeah, we've got an error coming out there. Now, in this particular case, yeah, so it is working because if I wasn't returning at this point, we would get okay. But as you can see, I am getting an error. So what's happening is because this throws an error, the question mark operator is actually returning from the function before it does this. Wow, so I'm really getting to a point where I feel there's a lot I don't understand, and most of it seems to be related to traits. So I'm now anxious to get onto traits and to have a look at those. I'll write this up and put it on blog.caveofprogramming.com. So if you go to that, you'll be able to find these examples right there, along with my code on GitHub. Until next time, happy coding.